Let's combine some images together in more interesting ways. Here I'm just going to drag one image on top of another, and I'm going to try to get these to combine together based on the brightness of this image. If you look at this image, you notice that there's an awful lot of black in it, or just really dark content. Do you remember when we used a layer mask before? In a layer mask, black causes things to become hidden when white makes them show up. Or we get the opposite of that by inverting something. Because if we inverted this picture and made a negative of itself, then we would end up with a white dress. And if white makes things show up in a layer mask, we could make things show up where the dress is. So let's click on the layer that contains her. I'm going to select all and copy. Then I'm going to go to the layer that contains what I'd like to combine with this, turn its eyeball on, and I'm going to end up adding a layer mask. I'll click on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel, and I want to paste the picture of her into the layer mask so it controls where this picture shows up. In order to do that, you need to make the layer mask visible. To make it visible, because right now I can't see it over here on the main image, you can hold down the Option key and click on it. Then, as long as it's visible like that, after Option clicking on the thumbnail on the Layers panel, you can paste something into it. If you want to see the effect of that, just stop viewing the layer mask by Option clicking on it again. And now you can see that the brightness of that image is being used to control where this shows up. Got it largely in the background, though. I would like the exact opposite of that. I want it to mainly show up inside here. So all I'm going to do is with the layer mask active in my Layers panel is I'm going to invert it. So we have the exact opposite in there. If you watch in the Layers panel and you see where the black dress is, we should end up with a white dress now. And white in a layer mask makes things show up. So I can start seeing it showing up inside of this. The only thing is it's showing up in too many other areas. So all we need to do then is adjust the contents of the layer mask. And in a layer mask, black hides things. And if I look at the layer mask right now in my Layers panel, there's not really anything that's solid black in there. So in levels, the upper left slider forces areas to black. And if I pull it in, more and more of the image should start disappearing. And we can kind of clean up the look of the image to limit it more to where I would like it, which is to her, and I kind of like it in that shadow behind her. You can also move the middle slider to control any transition that might be there. And then you can also manually paint. So if I don't like the fact that it's in the dark portion of her hair, all I need to do is grab the paintbrush tool, paint with black, and wherever I paint, it will be removed. So now we can have anything we want in that mask, have it fill in what used to be the dark portions of the image. And if I want to reposition it, you have to be careful. If you use the Move tool, you'll find that you move the whole thing, and it's like not going to line up anymore. But if you come in here and you click on this little link to turn it off, now if you make this part of the layer active by clicking on it, you can reposition this, and that will stay lined up with what's under it. So just turn off that little chain symbol, make sure this is clicked on, and now I could use the Move tool and see about moving that to wherever I would like. And if, again, there's any area where I don't like it, I end up just painting with black, and maybe I don't like it within the shadow, so I can paint it out. And then we could also invert the mask to get it in the opposite area. But I end up looking for images that have either a large area of white or a large area of black to be able to use in this way where I can use it as a mask and therefore limit where a particular image might appear. Let's see. I'm trying to think. We have 8 minutes left. Should we do? I've got like a whole bunch of things I could do. We could keep going for hours. And all right, let's do a little polar planets. I want to show you how where in a lot of advertisements these days in magazines, I see an effect being somewhat popular. And what it is to create something that might resemble a planet. Here is one example that has not been cleaned up. And I want to show you how can you do that? How should you think about it as well? Usually they'll end up cleaning it up so you don't have these artifacts in the corners and such. I'll show you some examples where all I did was I took an image and I tested it. I didn't do any of the steps that we're going to be doing to make it look good. I just was testing to see would this particular image be appropriate and just see what would it look like when I bend all sorts of things. Now you'll notice in most of these there'll be a seam in here. Do you see the seam right there? And part of the technique we'll go through is retouching out the seam. You see the seam again? Another seam there. Blatant seam. So that's going to be part of our thing. There's our seam again. So let's figure out what do you do to create those and how do you avoid the seam. So I'm going to open an image to use. We'll end up using this guy. Close out some of the other images we had open. And the first thing is we need a square document in the end. But we want to start off with more of a panoramic image because it's going to end up distorting the picture when it ends up spinning it around a circle. And if we end up starting with a normal image, it'll be even more distorted. So I'm going to start off with kind of a panorama-looking image. What it's going to do is it's going to connect the left edge of this picture with the right edge. Imagine you bent it all the way around, just like an Asian-style fan, that you fan your face with, how you can spread it out, and if you could spread it all the way around, the two ends would touch. Well, imagine you had your picture printed on that, and as you spread it out, in the end, the two ends touched. Well, that's going to create a seam where whatever's on the right side of the picture, if it doesn't line up with what's on the left side of the picture, we'll see a blatant seam. So first, let's go and look at that seam. Let's make it visible here. We'll do that with a filter called offset. Offset means just move. When I choose offset, there's just a setting here I'm going to change called horizontal, and I'll move it around until the edge of the picture looks to be somewhat near the middle. Doesn't have to be exact. The main thing is it's not near the edge of the picture. All that did was move it over the number of pixels that's typed in here. Then I want it to act as if this is printed on a conveyor belt, and whatever went beyond the edge just looped around and filled in the other side. And I use a setting here called wrap around to accomplish that. So I'll turn on wrap around, and that's what will cause whatever went off the edge of the document to fill in on the other side. And there is where I can see my seam. You see that blatant seam? Now this was nice that these mountains were really close to the same height, and that's what's important, is to find an image that where on the left side of the image and the right side of the image, whatever's there is about the same height and would be close to lining up. So it's not just any image this will work with. And in this particular case, I ended up looking at images and finding ones where the mountains and the horizon line were about the same height on both ends of the picture. I'm going to then use the spot healing brush to try to retouch out that seam. I'm just going to paint across it like this, and I'm going to try to avoid important content, or if I hit important content, I'm going to completely cover it up so it can try to deal with it. I'm just going to paint like that and see if it can do it. Didn't do too bad in some of these areas, but I usually will spend more time fine-tuning this. In this particular case, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we only have a little bit of time left in this session. But right now, I'd spend a lot of time getting this smoky stuff to kind of naturally progress over to this smoky stuff. For now, I'll just try one big swatch and see if it will be nice enough to give us some sort of, that's not terrible, some sort of transition that looks more realistic than an abrupt transition. Okay? But usually I'd make that even better. Then, after we have largely retouched out that seam, next we need the document to be a square. If it's not a square to begin with, then we're going to end up with an oval instead of a circle for our end result. So to make it a square, what I'm going to do is, I would also remember in our sky, can you tell the sky's darker right here than elsewhere? There's going to be a dark spot in the end result then. I would usually even out the brightness right there. You could make an adjustment in there, or you could come in here and this isn't the best tool to use, but it's an easily accessible one. I can go over there and brighten that a little. But if there's anything where it's not even in brightness, you're going to see it in the end result. So I'm going to go here to image size. And when I'm in image size, I'm going to copy the larger of the two numbers that are in here. Either the width or the height, copy whatever one's larger. Then there's a little chain symbol here, which makes it so the aspect ratio of our picture remains consistent. I'm going to turn that off by clicking on it. And I'm going to select whatever number was lower, and I'm going to paste in what was the higher number. I'm making it a square by taking the higher number and getting it in both fields. In order to do that, the chain symbol must be turned off, and this checkbox called Resample Image has to be on. Right? That's usually on by default. I'll click OK, and in a moment we should end up with a square document that looks stretched, because we just took a panorama and made it square by stretching it. Then we need it to be upside down, because whatever's at the top of the document is going to be the center of our planet, and whatever is on the bottom of the document is going to be the equivalent to the sky. And so this isn't going to be right. So we're going to take this and simply choose, let's see, image rotation, flip canvas vertical. That just means make my picture upside down. Right? Now we've done all the prep work we need. And next I'm going to apply a filter. The filter is called polar coordinates. And with polar coordinates there are two settings. The default should be rectangular to polar, but I played with this last night, so it was on the other one. And let's see what happens now when I click that. We just made a planet. Now, there is a seam in here. I think it's right about here. And that's where this kind of smoky-ish area suddenly seems to change a little bit. That's where I didn't spend a lot of time with my retouching. Also, this part of the sky right here just looks a little different in color. That's where I brightened it just a little, but it wasn't overly careful. Right there was where our seam was, so we retouched out. Had we not retouched it out, we'd see a crisp one there. Sometimes after doing this, I want to change it a little bit more, and I'll also apply something called pinch. And I'll tell it to pinch it about 50%, and that just means pull the middle in. You see what that just did if I choose undo? Pinch. But that's how we can make a little planet. What did we do? We did offset so we could see the seam, retouch it out. We stretched the image into a square and flipped it upside down. Had we not flipped it upside down, I'll show you what it would have looked like, and then you'll realize why. Polar coordinates, this is if we didn't. We'll have a donut. Now the sky is in the middle instead of the outside, so we needed to flip it. Otherwise, this would look pretty cool, though, if you retouch out the outer parts. You put some trees out there or something.